If you didn't know already, Jeff Kaplan, the game director for Overwatch, actually frequents the Battle.net forums for Overwatch. You know, he talks to the community, answers questions, and tries to resolve problems there because he is one of the best people to talk to about these problems because he has an insight into how the game is actually developed. One of the conversations Jeff chimed in on was one regarding the D.Va nerfs. You know, there's a few people on the Battle.net forums that think they are unneeded and they need to be reverted because D.Va apparently wasn't OP. Jeff seemed to be kind of sick of this attitude towards D.Va, and basically responded saying, you know what? Only 0.26% of Overwatch players have actually tested these nerfs. 99.74% of the community has never played with D.Va in her nerfed state. So how can most of them be complaining when they haven't actually tried her? What Jeff says here is kind of true. It makes sense. You know, you can't really complain about something if you haven't actually tested it yourself, which means a majority of the players who are complaining about it haven't actually tried her, which is kind of wrong. But it also begs the question, why has nobody gotten on the PTR to play with these changes? Only 0.26% of Overwatch players have gone on the PTR and tested them. That is a pathetic number. With numbers that bad, I think it's hard to blame the community for this problem. It's clearly something on Blizzard's end, and you know, it's pretty obvious to me that in some way, shape, or form, the PTR sucks. I have a pretty good idea of how the Overwatch PTR server works because I do actually play on it a lot. It's kind of my job, and I know how other games do it. I know how League of Legends does it. I know how other games do it. I've participated in a few beta tests like the PTR server kind of is, so I have a pretty good idea of why Overwatch's PTR is god-awful compared to some of the rest, and what we can do to improve it to actually get players playing on it, you know, so we don't have more Annas, or more OP D.Vas, or more anything that is completely unbalanced and out of line, because if we had an actual player base that played on the PTR whenever it was live, we wouldn't have as many problems, because, you know, when Blizzard has more people testing these heroes before they go live, or their changes, there's a much better chance that they won't go live completely unbalanced. You know, if we all said that the old D.Va would be OP, which some people did, but not many people did, let's just assume everybody that was on the PTR last time it was live, everyone said D.Va was OP when she originally got her buffs. Blizzard probably wouldn't have changed anything because the sample size is so small that they wouldn't have to change. Like, there's no way of actually testing it. The PTR is pretty much exclusively used for testing bugs because there's enough players that play on it to, you know, experience bugs, but there's not nearly enough players that play on it to show the true balance of a hero after nerfs or buffs. And that's why when we see someone change in the PTR, it's kind of rare that their changes get changed before they go live. I know it happens, but it doesn't happen a lot. A good example of this was Hook 2.0. Hook 2.0 was so game-changing because people are sick of getting hooked through walls that a lot of players went onto the PTR to test it, and when they realized it didn't work as they wanted to, they did a little bit of changing on it, and now we have Hook 2.1. So, you know, when we actually go on the PTR, we get stuff done, but that's kind of, like I said, a bug fix. You know, the hook was bugged. As far as balance goes, we need a lot more players on the PTR to actually see how a hero will perform when they go live. So let's now talk about it. What can Blizzard do to make the PTR better? Because right now, nobody's playing on it unless there's some big change that happens. And even when that happens, I'm pretty sure everyone just hopped on the PTR like once or twice to play a few games on Roadhog and then hopped off it and went back to live servers. So what can Blizzard do better? Why does the current PTR suck? Well, for one, you have nothing that you have on your live account that you do on the PTR, which is just stupid in my opinion. The PTR is like a snapshot of your account from like 3 months ago, something really old, so anything you unlock you don't get to use. And for some people that doesn't matter, skins don't matter, but for a lot of people it does. You know, if you worked and you put time into trying to get certain skins, you want to play with them. That's not unreasonable. And on top of this, since the PTR is a snapshot of your account, anything you unlock there is not going to transfer over to your main account. So with this in mind, you don't get anything from your main account and you don't get anything to add to your main account on the PTR. There's no progression, and because there's no progression, I have two solutions that could potentially get more people on the PTR, and both are very reasonable solutions in my opinion. The first one is simply just sync up the accounts. You know, make it so if you unlock something on the main account, you get it on the PTR. If you get a loot box on the PTR, you get it on your main account. You could even make it so there's a bonus for hopping on the PTR the first time, where you get 1 or 2 loot boxes for your first 2 wins or something, just to get people on it. People love loot boxes, Jeff. It doesn't really cost you anything to give them 1 or 2 free loot boxes. You do it anyway. So make a reward every time the PTR is updated, a free loot box or 2 for your main account when you log on. People will play games just to get those free loot boxes. It'll get people on there and talking about the changes that happened, and it could probably help the game out a lot. I don't think this is unreasonable at all, considering you're still playing the game. It's the same game with just a different patch, so why shouldn't you be able to get those loot boxes that you would have been able to get before? Now, there is another option though. If Blizzard is dead set on having no progression in the PTR, there's another perfectly reasonable solution that we can have. Unlock everything in the PTR. Everything unlocked. You can use any skins, anything. It's all unlocked, it's all free, loot boxes are free, everything is free on the PTR, and you can just do whatever you want there. And this sounds crazy, but think about the way League of Legends does it actually, is like this. When you hop on the League of Legends, I believe it's called the PBE, the public beta environment, you have unlimited currency and basically everything is unlocked. You can do whatever you want. If you really want people to play on the PTR server, other than the people that really care about the game, you're going to need to give them some incentive. So we either need to give them option 1, where they can actually progress and level up their main account while still on the PTR, or option 2, where they get to experiment with things they might not have on their main account. And you know, the common argument against the everything unlocked method would be that everyone would only play on PTR then, because everything's unlocked. That is just not the case. If you're worried about that, that's totally not a problem, because for one, competitive you could just disable in PTR, so people would not be playing competitive there. They'd have to go to their main account. PTR would be for testing only, and 2, PTR is only unlocked very certain times whenever patches go live. It's not unlocked all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year. So it's not like people could stay there even if they wanted. And these aren't the only 2 options. Obviously there are more. One more I can think of that would get people on the PTR without even having too much incentive is to make more changes and make bigger changes. Because to be honest, you don't see a lot of people on the PTR unless big changes are made. Like Roadhog's hook, his hook 2.0, that got a good amount of people over to the PTR. At least it seemed like. It seems like a lot of people have been there. I don't have the statistics, but I know for a fact some people went there specifically to test the hook, even though they don't normally go to the PTR server. So, big changes like this would get people over there. And in the long run, lots of big changes, if they were well enough tested, would prove to be helpful for the game. Remember, PTR isn't permanent, so if you make a big change and a bunch of people go over to test it and hate it, you can revert it. There's it's like a sandbox. Blizzard can experiment in this zone, but they really choose not to, and I think they're kind of limiting themselves. I don't know what it's like on the Blizzard end of things, but it seems like from their end right now, they're like, we can't make big changes because nobody will test them, and on our end, it's like, well, they're not making big changes, so why bother testing them? And we also lack any sort of reason to test their changes, because in past instances, there have been times where they have not listened to the feedback and put through patches anyway, and I can't give any examples. There were a few times it's happened, and also we've also talked about the fact that there is no incentive. So the lack of any sort of incentive to play the PTR is the real problem here, and I really think it can be solved by making a few of these simple changes, everything unlocked, unlimited currency, stuff like that. Now, there is one thing I'd like to mention before we go, because as I look more at the post Jeff made, it's come to my attention that the point he was trying to make isn't that barely anybody plays the PTR. He didn't seem to have a problem with that. It seemed to be the problem was people are complaining without actually playing it. They're kind of just blindly listening to what other people have to say. So as a community, it is our job to make sure we don't complain about things we don't actually know about. Go in and test on the PTR before you complain, because that seems to be the real problem. And it actually seems like, I think a big portion of this problem is YouTubers, and I've made videos about PTR changes, and those have probably contributed to this. I said something about it, and some of you probably thought, well, Lone Hawk said it, so I don't need to test it. I trust his word. Others of you might not have, but I know some of you did, and that's a problem on my own end. But it is still important that you guys test it, even if I say something, especially considering A, I'm not always right, and B, there are some Overwatch YouTubers who are idiots. And I'm not going to name any names because I don't like starting beef, but there are some out there that have no idea what they're talking about. So make sure you're making your own opinions. You can use mine among other YouTubers' opinions as well to help guide you, but make your own opinions too, and then give your feedback on the Battle.net forums. That way Jeff can hear your voice as well. Hopefully everything I said to you makes sense. We do all hopefully want the Overwatch community to be the best it can be, and I really think changing the way the PTR works and the interaction between the Blizzard development team and the PTR server is going to help improve the game in the long run. So we need to make that better, which is hopefully where my suggestions come in today. Be sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed, even though I've heard they're completely useless, so maybe don't. But what you should do is click that video on screen, because that helps me out a lot, more than any like will, and I know you'll like the content it's gonna show you. So anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed. Check out some other videos. I'll see you all later. Lone Hawk out.